In the early years of World War II, the United States faced a brutal learning curve in the skies over Europe. American bombers, once thought to be nearly invincible when flying in tight formations, were being torn apart by the Luftwaffe. Crews that had trained for months were being lost in minutes. In the cold, high-altitude air over occupied Europe, the message was clear. The US needed an escort fighter that could go the distance, one that could fly with bombers deep into German territory and back. But few believed such a machine could even exist. That was until a civilian engineer, a man not in uniform, not a soldier, came up with an idea that would change everything. His name was Kelly Johnson, and he worked for Lockheed. Johnson wasn't the kind of man who accepted impossible. In 1937, when the US Army Air Corps asked for a high-altitude interceptor capable of flying faster and higher than any aircraft in existence, most designers dismissed it as fantasy. Johnson didn't. In less than 180 days, he and his secretive team at Lockheed's Skunk works had built something unlike anything the world had ever seen. The P-38 Lightning. Its twin engines gave it unmatched power. Its sleek, futuristic design, twin booms joined by a central nacelle, looked alien to everyone who saw it. To its pilots, it looked like salvation. The P-38 could fly over 400 miles per hour, climb to 40,000 feet, and carry a deadly arsenal for 50 caliber machine guns and a 20mm cannon mounted in the nose. With all that firepower aimed straight ahead, it could rip apart bombers or fighters with terrifying accuracy. But what made the P-38 truly revolutionary wasn't just its design. It was how adaptable it became. Early on, it was used for interception and reconnaissance, but as the war expanded, its long range made it perfect for escorting bombers across vast distances. In Europe, however, it faced new challenges. The cold air over the North Atlantic caused engine failures. Its complex turbo superchargers didn't like the damp, freezing weather. Pilots had to fight not only the enemy, but also the quirks of the aircraft itself. Still, the P-38 proved its worth. Over the Pacific, it became a legend. American aces like Richard Bong and Thomas Maguire earned their reputations in P-38s, racking up victory after victory against Japanese aircraft. Its twin engines gave it the security to fly hundreds of miles over water, a critical edge in a theater defined by islands and oceans. Pilots loved its speed, its stability, and the fact that, unlike single-engine fighters, it could bring them home on one engine if the other failed. Then came a mission that cemented the Lightning's place in history. On April 18, 1943, U.S. intelligence intercepted Japanese radio transmissions indicating that Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor, would be flying to Bougainville Island for an inspection. President Roosevelt reportedly gave the order, "Get Yamamoto." The mission that followed was one of the most daring and precise aerial operations of the war. A group of 18 P-38s took off from Guadalcanal, flying more than 400 miles at wavetop height to avoid radar detection. Their route was so long and dangerous that it left no room for error. Every detail from fuel consumption to timing had to be perfect. As Yamamoto's bomber approached the rendezvous point, the American pilots rose from the sea and struck. The Japanese formation never stood a chance. Yamamoto's plane was hit, spiraled into the jungle, and exploded on impact. The operation, known as Operation Vengeance, became one of the most famous targeted strikes of the entire war, and it was only possible because of the P-38's unmatched range and speed. But even as it earned glory, the P-38 faced skepticism in Europe. Luftwaffe pilots called it the fork-tailed devil, but American airmen sometimes cursed it too. It was big, heavy, and hard to handle at high speeds. Compressibility, a mysterious aerodynamic effect, made dives dangerous, sometimes fatal. Pilots would find their controls locked up as they hurtled toward the ground. For many, it was a death trap. For others, it was a challenge to be mastered. That mastery came from experience and innovation. Engineers worked relentlessly to fix its flaws. Dive recovery flaps were added, engine cooling was improved, and pilots learned to use its strengths to deadly effect. In the hands of an expert, the P-38 was unstoppable. It could climb faster than most fighters, hit harder, and fly farther than any escort before it. By 1944, the US had refined its tactics. Squadrons like the 475th Fighter Group in the Pacific and the 20th Fighter Group in Europe were rewriting the rules of aerial combat. Pilots flew smarter, attacking from altitude, using the P-38's heavy guns to devastating effect. One pilot described it as flying a sledgehammer through silk. It wasn't graceful, it was powerful. Yet behind every triumph was the quiet genius of a civilian who refused to accept limits. Kelly Johnson never flew combat missions, but his creation gave thousands of pilots the edge they needed to survive. He was constantly improving it, sometimes before the military even asked. His belief was simple: if it works, make it better. If it doesn't, make it work. That mindset turned the P-38 from a troubled prototype into one of the most versatile and feared fighters of the war. In the final years of the conflict, as the Allies advanced toward victory, the Lightning became a symbol of America's technological daring. It was more than a fighter, it was a message. Its sleek, twin-boom silhouette streaking across the sky told friend and foe alike that innovation could win wars. The Germans had their Messerschmitts and Focke-Wulfs, but the Americans had imagination, and in the P-38, that imagination took flight. When the war finally ended, the P-38's legacy was cemented. It had destroyed more Japanese aircraft than any other U.S. Army Air Force's fighter. It had carried out reconnaissance, bombing, interception, and escort missions across every major theater, and it had done so with a grace that belied its power. Many pilots said that, despite its quirks, the Lightning saved their lives more than once. In the post-war years, the world moved on to jets. The Lightning's engines fell silent, its distinctive hum replaced by the shriek of turbojets and the race for speed. But its influence never faded. Every generation of aircraft that followed, from the F-86 Sabre to the F-22 Raptor, carried traces of its DNA, the focus on range, power, and adaptability. The P-38 had proven that one machine could be both elegant and lethal, both art and engineering. Looking back, it's easy to see why so many pilots spoke of the P-38 with reverence. It was the aircraft that turned fear into confidence, defeat into dominance. It bridged two worlds, the piston era and the dawn of the jet age. And behind it all was one man's refusal to believe in impossible. Kelly Johnson's vision not only gave America a weapon, but also a philosophy: that the limits of technology are only boundaries waiting to be redrawn. As the sun set on World War II, thousands of P-38s sat on dusty airfields from the Philippines to France. Some were scrapped, others sold for parts, and a few, the lucky few, were preserved as relics of a time when courage and creativity decided the fate of nations. But to those who once flew them, they were never just machines. They were companions, protectors, and sometimes miracles. Today, when restored P-38s take to the skies at air shows, people still stop and stare. That unmistakable twintle shape, the roaring twin engines, the shimmering aluminum skin, they all speak of an era when men pushed the boundaries of flight and fought for the future of the free world. The Lightning story isn't just about war. It's about innovation born from desperation, genius born from necessity. And in the end, that's what makes its story timeless. Because long after the last Lightning fades into the horizon, the lesson it taught remains. Sometimes, all it takes is one idea, one civilian's impossible vision, to change the course of history forever.